I've seen and experienced a lot over the last 7 decades in my career. I've met many interesting people, performed over 25,000 shows, and yes, even tuned in on the thoughts in the minds of over 1 million. But then, who's counting? Now, I'm telling you what really happened. Welcome to Kreskin's Amazing Experiences. This is Kreskin, and welcome to Kreskin's Amazing Experiences. Right now, I have a very special theme that I'm embracing, and that is how I'm going to suggest and share with a mass group of people, including you as well, the experience of being paralyzed by yours truly. Now, understand that this has become only an occasional moment in part of my career through the years. I can remember, by the way, years ago when I was a kid, there was a great radio show called The Shadow, and it was written by Walter B. Gibson. It was an extremely successful program. But what people don't know about The Shadow is that it was not successful in the beginning. He was a strange man, he had a strange laugh, and inevitably became one of the most successful crime series, mystery series. We listened to it, my family and I, not just my brother and myself, but my parents, grandparents, everybody listened to The Shadow. It wasn't successful at first, and they couldn't figure out what to do with The Shadow. And then someone had a crazy idea. Why not give The Shadow not just hypnotic powers, but the ability, the power to become invisible? And don't you know, this character who saved Margot Lane, who was one of his loves in the stories, and saved her from crime people and what have you, that out of nowhere you'd hear this mysterious voice laughing, and it was The Shadow, and it became a tremendously popular series. Well, I decided to borrow a few of my performances and add this power of suggestion to what would be happening on the stage. I can remember one particular time when I had a group of a dozen women and men on stage, and I caused them to become invisible to a handful of people who had volunteered on the stage. They weren't aware of their presence and what have you. But I did not remove from them the sound. So as these people are volunteers of mine, and the 3 or 4 people whom I caused to be invisible, they would be picking up objects on a table, and the objects would seem to float. And suddenly I said, you know, I just got a crazy idea. The crazy idea being, what if this was exercising the power of The Shadow? And this committee, who was, quote, invisible, started laughing. And guess what? I didn't do it again, because some of my subjects on stage raced out of the theater screaming that they heard these invisible voices laughing around them. And I borrowed, as the audience never forgot, but the theme of The Shadow as part of my presentation. From time to time, I've done such, and it's been always fascinating to have a few people on stage who have somehow been convinced that they are invisible, and lo and behold, what starts to happen is they hear laughter around them, strange kind of laughter that they don't recognize. So here shows you how intriguing people's lives can change just by a different kind of sound or a different kind of alterations or what have you. Now, in my experiences, of course, in experimenting how I can alter people's feelings. As I've said earlier today, I can cause people to start feeling different sensations as they're sitting in a room, or they're watching something, or paying attention to things around them, not knowing what could be happening when, lo and behold, they don't hear voices in the same way that you and I do. They hear voices in quite dramatic style, or perhaps voices that seem like they're almost from a paranormal, mysterious background. And that's the voices that fills the room and scares the group of people that are participating and looking for the unusual, the unexpected, or should I use one more term, the unexplained. Now, what is most intriguing is if I decide to reset and remove the impact that I had on these people who were hearing voices and didn't know where the voices were coming from, hearing sound and didn't know where the sound was coming from. And then I simply would say to them, you know, I'm going to show you how this is done. I'm going to explain what's really going on. Especially you will realize this when I count to 5. And I very slowly count to 5. Well, of course, everyone is watching more closely those that are invisible, because you'll suddenly see during my performance people on stage screaming as these invisible voices became visible out of nowhere. Where the hell did they come from? That's how powerful ideas can be, and how the mind can be altered and influenced. Halloween, of course, is a perfect setting to take advantage of the unknown forces, unknown motions, unknown sounds, and what have you, because there are people who have enjoyed, as I have, visiting homes that had legendary backgrounds of supposedly being haunted. Not that I found any haunting in the homes. I found that it was probably created by other more natural means. But there are legendary homes all over the United States, all over the world, that have background stories of being haunted in some way. And I can think of a couple of occasions whereby a group of friends gathered in a room and we were looking for something unusual to happen. And it reached a point whereby maybe something on the table started to move by itself, or what have you was taking place. But then I realized that I was increasing the impact of the invisible quality about this whole phenomena, and slowly I could suggest that certain people are going to be leaving shortly, and don't forget to say goodbye to them, and when they do leave, because they're an important part of the party, and you can tell them later on what happened during this party after they left, that they missed something very, very special. And you probably will notice that some of them are preparing to leave already, and the reason, of course, I'm mentioning this is to see who amongst the group is noticing that a couple, 2 or 3 people are leaving. And I said, you know, they're going to go out of here quietly, but don't forget to say goodbye to them in some way as they leave, which I suspect you can probably hear them leaving right now. And don't forget, say goodbye to them. And the 3 or 4 people said, gee, goodbye, goodbye Nancy, or goodbye so-and-so. I said, that's very, very good. Even though there's less of us here, wouldn't it be interesting is if less of us being here, that a table that's much heavier than a billiard ball or a playing card or what have you, that a table could start to rise into the air by first of all moving very, very slightly. And I mean moving very slightly, as suddenly a couple of people look and say, oh, you noticed the motion? Yes, it's probably going to move even more so. Even if we don't ask or two how something like this could happen in this darkened room where we're talking about people who passed away that lived here for years, and suddenly, look at that. You'll notice it's moving even more so. Now you know, in seances, things can become so different in their weight and what have you, that ghosts could actually cause tables to rise and slowly rise off the floor. Look at, 2 legs aren't even touching the floor of that table. And that's a pretty good sized table that 4 of us could be sitting around. And look what else is happening. As everyone is watching and seeing this happen is stunned to see a table float into the air, and not just float, but look at how light it's become as the table seems to hover over the people who are sitting there, hovering. Finally, I said, you know, I could remove the effect of that table suddenly like this, and the table crashes to the floor, and people scream.